We're the ones who step up for each other. I've got your back. You've got mine. Kindness, humility, empathy. It's not just talk. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. And no one can take that from us. The movement to bring it back, it started here. And here. And here. In school gymnasiums, community centers, the living room down the block. You'll be where? Okay, we'll be there. Who are we? We're the movement that will beat Donald Trump. Welcome. We're going to have to sweat for it. We're going to have to sacrifice and fight. We're going to have to lead. Everyone is going to have to lead with kindness, humility, empathy, and not just talk, but action. Action today, action tomorrow. Action until we win. And we will win if we do this together. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. Now let's show them.
Thank you for joining this Biden for President Wisconsin Build Back Better Clean Energy Roundtable with Mayor Pete Buttigieg. And now, please welcome Congressman Ron Kind.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Recently I was able to host a virtual roundtable discussion with Joe Biden here in Western Wisconsin, where we were discussing his Build Back Better plan for America. Today, we've got a great panel assessed today with now world-famous Mayor Pete Buttigieg of West Bend, Indiana. In a moment, I'm going to introduce him for some opening comments. But we also have a wonderful panel of guests here today, each with their own insight and perspective of where we need to move America today. Starting with Chris Martinez, who's president of Dairy Energy Solutions, a company outside of Milwaukee, servicing southeastern part of Wisconsin. Then we'll hear from Kelly Plack-Rome. She's from the Plack Organic Acres, an organic farm outside of Cuba City in southwestern Wisconsin. And then finally, we'll hear from Cameron Olson. He's the CEO of Olson Solar Energy in Onalaska, Wisconsin. As we're dealing with this virus, we are encouraging everyone to stay safe and to stay healthy. And there are some practical steps we all can take, and you probably have heard this repeatedly. We have to wash our hands a lot, even if it makes us uncomfortable. We have to maintain proper social distancing where we can, and also wear facial coverings whenever we go out in public and we come in close proximity with others. I shared with the panel today my own special face mask, highlighting our Green Bay Packer colors here in the state, but we really do need to practice good neighborly habits like this to keep each other safe. But as we're dealing with this virus, it's important we also discuss about how we can rebuild America again. And that's why I'm proud to support Joe Biden. Joe Biden has released his Build Back Better plan for America. Not only does he have a plan to combat the global pandemic, this coronavirus that's in our midst right now, but also what we can do working together to bring this nation, to heal the divide, to build back America stronger, better, and more equal, ultimately, with the economic opportunities. During our forum with Joe a little while back, we talked about the World Economic Opportunity Agenda and his plan to rebuild rural America, of course, support for family farms, addressing the digital divide, the infrastructure needs, support for our healthcare providers in rural America, all of which are necessary right now. But today we're going to start focusing a little bit more on the infrastructure and the green sustainable energy economy that we desperately need. But we also should recognize this. Donald Trump has been fond of touting the economy of his first few years of the administration. An economy, by the way, that he inherited from President Obama and Biden, an economy that was strong and growing by the time Donald Trump became president. In fact, most of the economic indicators in the last few years of the Obama-Biden administration were stronger than the first few years of the Trump administration. We won't count this year because of the global pandemic and what it's done to our economy. But we should recognize that Donald Trump had one job when he became president, is don't screw it up. and allow the economy to continue to grow with a strong GDP, the lower unemployment numbers, more low-income families moving out of poverty into the middle class. Exactly what President Obama and Biden left this administration. But instead, President Trump failed to recognize that the strength of our economy is directly tied to the health of all Americans. And that's why we still, 7 months after the virus landed on our shore, are in desperate need of a national coordinated strategy to defeat this virus. Joe Biden has laid that plan out, along with this plan now on rebuilding America, so we emerge from this even better than in the past. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion. I'm looking forward to what the panelists each have to say. And with that, let me turn it over now to Mayor Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of West Bend, Indiana. He is unquestionably one of the young, bright, shining stars of the Democratic Party. And it's because of his pragmatism, his measured thoughtfulness, his knowledge on the issues of what it takes to bring people together to rebuild our community. He ran a spectacular presidential campaign. I would mention and remind you that he actually won the Iowa caucuses, but because of the lateness in counting the vote there, he didn't get the type of bounce I'm sure he was looking for coming out of Iowa. But I'm proud that he too has endorsed Joe Biden's candidacy because it's the right path for our country right now. So Mayor Pete, even with these glowing terms, it's not just because your husband Chasten is a proud graduate of UW-Eau Claire in the heart of my congressional district, but the fact that you have a lot of fans out there and a lot of respect and admiration from all of us. So thank you very much for taking time to join us today, and let me turn it over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Congressman. I'm honored to virtually be in your district, especially after hearing so much about Eau Claire from Chasten, and I'm looking forward to visiting for myself. And I also just want to recognize what an effective advocate you are for the families in Wisconsin that you serve, what an important thing it is for your progressive voice and your pragmatic leadership to continue to serve our all-important communities, rural, industrial, and agricultural. And I know that there are so many in your district who support you and need you to continue serving them. And thank you for joining for this opportunity to come together and team up for Joe Biden. Stepping out of the presidential race just a few weeks after our exhilarating win in Iowa was not an easy decision, but it was easy to decide what to do next. I knew that our country, and especially the part of the country that we come from, the Midwest, needs someone like Joe Biden who is relentlessly focused on bringing the American people together, who understands that this presidential election is a contest for the soul of the nation, and who understands that there is no future for America if we have to choose between a vibrant, strong economy in the heartland or between doing the right thing about climate and securing a better future for young and future generations. Our country can only move ahead if we can do both of those things. And not only is it possible, it's imperative. It's one of the reasons why I was so pleased to see the detail and the boldness of the Build Back Better plan, one that understands, even in its very name, that what the next president is going to have to do is not just try to turn back the clock and put us right back where we were before this pandemic struck, but to make sure that we don't have the same weaknesses and vulnerabilities that were laid bare by the pandemic. Even before this happened, as Congressman Kind pointed out, our economy was slowing down. Manufacturing was in recession. And we were clearly at a point as a country where we needed to take bold and decisive action. Needless to say, that's even more glaringly true now that we have come into this period where we need so urgently better leadership. Science tells us that we have a window of opportunity of less than a decade to stop some of the most dangerous effects of climate change from becoming irreversible. And that presents us with a narrowing window of opportunity, but also an opportunity to create millions of good paying jobs that are going to provide workers with new opportunities. Sometimes when they talk about green jobs, it creates, I think, for us an image that makes it sound newfangled or hard to get our heads around. But the reality is we're largely talking about good union jobs, jobs that we can picture right now. Electrical workers and plumbers and carpenters that we're going to need, workers in agriculture and manufacturing. And Joe Biden understands this, and his plan will harness the possibilities and the capabilities of American workers to put us on an irreversible path to achieve net zero emissions economy-wide, as scientists tell us we must by the middle of the century. We have been losing precious time in these last few years, and as a consequence of the trade war, have also been losing ground globally. China now has 4 times the market share of electric vehicle production that the US does. During my time as mayor, we were delighted when more jobs grew in our area in an electric vehicle production facility that used to make Hummers. But I couldn't help ask myself, as the Chinese-owned company took root in the community, why that couldn't be an American-owned company. And the reality is that we've got some decisions to make as a country about whether we're going to be playing catch up or whether we're going to get ahead. This is one of the reasons why the Biden plan is so focused on building the American auto industry, one which, by the way, was brought back from the brink in a politically unpopular but very wise decision by the Obama administration a decade ago. Take that same industry and its capabilities and make sure that we're once again on the cutting edge. At the same time, we've also got to make sure that our infrastructure nationally is in better shape. Infrastructure week has become a punchline. And yet the American people are very much aware of the need to build better infrastructure, whether you're in an urban, a suburban, or a rural community. We need smart roads. We need a better rail system to move passengers and freight around the country. We need better transit systems in our country. And when we do, we will also be upgrading our digital infrastructure, which, as this era has taught us, is critically important for everything from getting seen in rural areas by doctors through telemedicine to simply being able to do your homework. This is the right kind of prioritization that's going to strengthen our economy, prepare us for a greener future, and allow America to get ahead globally. I also just want to mention the importance of upgrading the building stock of this country, commercial buildings and houses. This is something that the Biden plan has bold and aggressive steps to do. Again, it creates tremendous opportunity in terms of good jobs that we know are part of the backbone of the middle class. And when we do it, when we have upgraded and more energy efficient homes, including affordable housing to the tune of 1.5 million new units, it's also going to be a savings to American families who on average will save $500 in energy expenditures by having access to these cleaner, greener homes. So again, we have an opportunity to break out of the false choice that we've been presented with and recognize that it is imperative to act for our economy and for our future. And this is no longer a theoretical issue. It's upon us, which is why we need leadership. Folks who are interested in learning more and being part of this campaign to create jobs and to combat climate change are encouraged. I'm encouraging you to text volunteer to 30330 to learn more about how you can help because we all have to be part of this right now. With that, Congressman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Mayor Pete. And you'll hear more about volunteer at 30330. We need your help. And what I find really exciting about the Biden plan is it was very much mirrored by the infrastructure legislation the House of Representatives just passed a couple of weeks ago. Yes, we have to rebuild our roads, our highways, our bridges, our ports, our airports, but there was important provisions in it for production tax credits for sustainable and renewable energy. Think solar, wind, geothermal, and energy efficient buildings. And also substantial investment in closing the digital divide, the broadband access that all Americans need, and that this virus has highlighted the great inequities, economic and educational, from this digital divide. And that too is a major component of the Biden plan. So let me go to the rest of our guests on the forum today, starting with Chris Martinez. Now, Chris is the founder and president of Dairy Energy Solutions, located in southeastern Wisconsin. In 2008, Darylyn began developing ways to implement and install energy-saving methods and promote sustainability. And some of the added services include renewable energy with photovoltaic and solar thermal design and installation. And by the way, Chris is also an IBEW recommended contractor. So Chris, it's a delight to welcome you here today, and let me turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Congressman, and thank you to Mayor Pete as well. It's an honor to participate today. Again, my name is Christopher Martinez. I'm the founder and president of Dairyland Energy Solutions. My company serves industrial, commercial, and healthcare markets. We provide sustainable and renewable services within these three sectors. Specifically, we employ electricians, plumbers, building automation technicians, and engineers. We're active in recruitment of local apprenticeship technicians, and our apprentices, by the way, finish a typical 5-year apprenticeship with no student debt. And over the course of those 5 years, they've earned anywhere between $200,000 and $250,000 in wages and benefits. With that, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to the other panelists. I've got plenty more that I can offer up for answering questions, but I'd, in interest of time, be willing to let the floor go to Kelly.
Great. Well, thanks, Chris. We'll work you into the conversation here in a little bit, but you're right. I'm going to introduce Kelly Plack-Rahm of the Plack Organic Acres next. This is a small organic farm just outside of Cuba City in southwestern Wisconsin. Cuba City, of course, is the city of presidents, coincidentally. But they've been certified organic since 1996. They currently produce small grains, beef, grass milk for Organic Valley. Organic Valley is the country's largest organic cooperative, again, in the heart of my congressional district, and we couldn't be more proud with the work they do there and how they service their membership, of which Kelly and her family is a part. And they've also invested in renewable energy at her farm, and I'm sure she's going to talk about that. But Cuba City, too, is the home of Jerry Pettigrew, the winningest high school boys basketball coach of all time. And my cousin Jeff used to teach and coach at Cuba City and help the girls win a couple of state basketball championships when he was there. So Kelly, it's a delight to welcome you today, and let me turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. You did a good job of introducing me. I don't really know too much more to add. I guess I am the second generation here on this farm. I just came back 6 years ago. This is the farm that I grew up on in the southwest corner of the state. My parents bought it in 1980, shortly after they got married, and just farmed it conventionally until, like Ron had mentioned, they transitioned to organic in 1996. And then in 2013, we even went beyond that and transitioned to a entirely grass-fed herd. So, yeah, so we're selling the grass milk to Organic Valley and then the small grains direct from farm. So.
Great. Well, thanks, Kelly. And we'll be back with you in a second as well to share a little bit more about, especially some of the renewable energy programs that you've got on the farm as well.
Okay.
So let me turn it over to Cameron Olson next. Cameron, along with his, I think, twin brother, if I recall, is CEO of Olson Solar Energy. They started that in 2017. Cameron also used to work for Ashley Furniture, one of our nation's largest furniture manufacturers located in Arcadia, Wisconsin, western Wisconsin. Their solar panel company serves everyone from residential to businesses and also including family farmers. So Cameron, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And great introduction. I appreciate that. So it is my twin brother. We're identical twins. So if you ever see us on the street, we do answer to both Brandon and Cameron. So, we started the company in 2017. We're located in Onalaska, Wisconsin. And we do service residential, commercial, and agriculture solar installations from design, sell, and install. So, we've right here, we serve western Wisconsin, primarily the greater La Crosse area. And thank you for having me on.
Great. Well, thank you, Cameron. Thank you so much. With that, let's open it up for a little further discussion. But Mayor Pete, let me just go back to you real quick, because sometimes you hear this argument that it's either green, sustainable energy or at the expense of jobs. I've never bought into that narrative. I believe we can do both, develop a sustainable future while also creating good paying jobs. Is that something that you recognize as mayor and then throughout the course of the presidential campaign?
You know, we saw that everywhere we went. And you can see it not just around the country, but again, around the world. The world's not waiting to see if the United States will reclaim our place at the cutting edge of clean technology. Either we do it or we're going to continue falling behind to competitors like China. But one of the things that was so inspiring was to see businesses around the country, like the ones who are represented on today's call, who have been at the forefront of creating jobs around alternative and renewable energy and other sustainable practices. And whether you're in agriculture or construction, whether you're in manufacturing or just about any other field, this is increasingly where so much of the opportunity lies. I also think that we got to consider the cost of doing nothing. The reality is that allowing climate change to worsen is a threat not only to our future, but to our economy. I know that sometimes in the public imagination, when we think about climate, we think about the stock footage from the South or North Pole that's in the B-roll of the news. We see those pictures of ice floes breaking off in the Antarctic. But climate change has come very close to home. I know for us here in South Bend, we've had 2 floods of the type that are supposed to happen every few hundred years. We had them less than 2 years apart when I was mayor. And that's just one example of the increasing effects that we've seen. Many of them, by the way, in particular, damaging to rural areas as well as to communities of color. Neighborhoods, often neighborhoods that are already disadvantaged, have been harmed by environmental damage. But also when you talk to folks in agriculture who, at the end of the day, do math for a living, manage uncertainty for a living, and are gauging when to buy, when to sell, and already contending with consolidation in both suppliers and where they got to sell to, are now contending with a higher degree of uncertainty when it comes to climate as well. So not only is there a downside to dealing with, failing to deal with climate economically, we also know that on the other side of that, there's a much brighter picture. But it's not going to happen on its own. It's going to take leadership.
Yeah, great, thanks, Pete. Chris, Cameron, I mean, you guys are on the front lines of creating these type of green jobs right here in the state of Wisconsin. What do you say to that argument, that it's an either-or proposition? Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, I guess I really do believe that it is. It's not an either-or. I believe that sustainability offers up an opportunity to grow. Like I had mentioned, we perform solar photovoltaic work. These projects can be installed in urban settings, suburban settings, and rural areas. That offers up opportunities for people to begin and continue right on through graduation of apprenticeship. We do solar thermal installations that are also available in those settings of urban and suburban and rural. And that allows for plumbers to come on up through the ranks again as apprentices and become master plumbers. But we also do, with our building automation, we have low voltage technicians, and we've recently began locally a new apprenticeship type of tract, if you will, that will allow these individuals to climb on through the ranks over a 3-year period. As they go through the ranks, they'll continue to climb in wages and benefits, and they graduate as a complete certified technician. So I completely disagree that it's either or. I really do believe that the renewables and the sustainables offer up great opportunities for growth for people in the workplace and contractors like ourselves.
And Chris, you are an IBEW contractor. How important is it for us to recognize and respect collective bargaining rights, the ability of workers to earn a decent wage with decent benefits in their jobs?
Yeah, I think it's immensely important. So we are an IBEW contractor. I do serve as a trustee on the apprenticeship board here in the greater Milwaukee area. And I do recognize that with good paying jobs and good benefits, that's essentially raising all tides, and all ships are rising. And we can see these entry-level candidates as they progress through their apprenticeship their wages increase, their benefits are very, very solid and comprehensive, and therefore the community improves, and we can get into all sorts of other things that does for our community, but for certain it allows for greater prosperity.
And Cameron, what are you seeing in this area about the demand for renewable energy, the products and services that you're offering, and also the cost savings that can come with this type of investment?
Yeah, so this area has been very excited about solar. So when we started in 2017, we were the only solar company in La Crosse. A few just outside of La Crosse area, but the renewable energy excitement has been just awesome in the La Crosse area. And when you talk about the savings, when you talk about being energy independent and not having tied to those energy bills, or be able to see the federal tax credit to be able to get some money back on that solar system, it is a real thing, and the cost savings are really there. And just to add to Chris's point about job creation, beyond just our own companies being able to create jobs, there's so many jobs that are touched and industries that are touched from a solar system going in, such as we use an electric company, Wet Signs Electric, for our electric work. Permitting needs to be taken, distributors to get product to those houses, or commercial and agriculture. So tons of jobs are created, not just from internally as our own companies, but then as the system goes in, there's a lot of moving parts. So.
Great, thanks, Cameron. Kelly, obviously your family a while back made the decision to develop a more sustainable agriculture practice by converting to organic. I've been co-chairing the organic caucus in the House. I know how difficult that transition is, but it's also a lifestyle choice to go organic. But you've also mentioned that your family has invested in renewable energy sources on your own farm. Could you explain a little bit more what you did there? Kelly, are you still with us?
Sorry, I was talking while on mute. I apologize. You can hear me now?
Yeah, you're great. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, in 2013, we installed a 34 kilowatt ground mounted solar array in our pasture, which it ends up overproducing a bit in the summer and then underproducing what our farm actually uses. So it's kind of a wash throughout the year. We pretty much produce about what we use on the farm. Originally, we did get a REAP grant to help install it, which I think was a big part of why my folks decided then to do it. However, at the time that they chose to install it, the payback for the monthly savings because of the net metering at that point was supposed to be, the payoff should have been about 12 years, and now it's increased to about 20 to 25 years. So that's kind of been a bit of a drawback to our personal situation, which hopefully maybe some changes can be made to the net metering terms to make it more attractive to more farmers or businesses to install that kind of stuff. But we've been very happy with it. It makes us feel good about producing clean energy. It provides shade for some cows that happen to be in that pasture at the time. Yeah, so it's been good, and we haven't had any major issues with any of the components that we've installed either. And then another thing, so that, helps to produce green energy, but then another thing that we have focused on is also just sequestering of CO2 just through more permanent pasture. We have gone from having about 20 acres of permanent pasture to now over 80 acres of permanent pasture that we rotate our cows through. And I kind of hope that that is a more regenerative agriculture practices is something that Biden's hopefully potential administration is able to look at.
Well, thanks, Kelly. I couldn't agree more. I'm very excited working with the future Biden administration, especially in time for the next farm bill, because we're already having talks about regenerative agriculture, CO2 sequestration on the farm, things that you're practicing is an organic farmer already, and we're just scratching the surface of how we can create some real win-win opportunities. But Kelly, let me just quickly stay with you for a second, because part of the Biden plan is a major expansion of broadband access, especially in rural Wisconsin, rural America. How important is that for your family, the operation, and for the rural community that we're willing to invest to ensure that that last mile is closed and that everyone has access to high-speed internet connection in their lives?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because we are kind of on that last mile. I have a decent internet connection here, but literally my neighbor over the hill, he has terrible internet. And in this climate right now, it's incredibly important that people are able to, do work or access school through the internet. So it's becoming, increasingly important that that is something that is focused on. Yeah, for us, we're going to start trying to do more direct sales from our farm. So ideally being able to access internet at all times of day is going to be important.
Great. Mayor Pete, obviously you've been discussing about the broadband and the digital divide that has existed throughout our country. Your thoughts about the importance of this investment, and whether if we just sit back and wait for the private sector, whether that's even feasible.
Yeah, the reality is we need to have investment at the federal level, and it can be done. It's not cheap, but it's a huge savings in the long run because of the economic opportunity that unlocks. Again, whether we're talking about greater possibilities for sales like Kelly was talking about, or something as simple as being able to participate in school, online learning. Hopefully we won't be forced into online environments for long the way we are right now, but there's still no question that online learning is a huge part of the future. And this is, to me, I think of it like mail. There may be a different level of cost associated with sending a postcard to a rural area a long way off versus sending it across town. But we made a decision as a country that same postage stamp is going to carry it wherever it needs to go within the United States of America, because that makes the United States of America stronger. It's the same thing with this kind of broadband infrastructure. I also just want to mention a couple of things that some of the others we're talking about that I think is worth considering right now. First of all, Kelly's point about land management, permanent pasture, I think goes to a great example of why every part of the U.S. can be a huge part of dealing with climate. I've seen some estimates that suggest that it's at least scientifically possible that with better soil management, we could take more carbon out of the atmosphere than the entire transportation sector is putting into it. And some of that is really going to take some cutting edge technological research that I know the Biden administration will support. Some of it is making sure that we make farmers whole when they take steps like Kelly and her family have, because the original carbon capture technology is called plants. And when you do that, that should be reflected and rewarded. And I know you and your colleagues are working on sustainability in future farm bills to try to reflect that. I also just want to mention, based on what Chris and Cameron had both mentioned, when we talk about what is a danger to jobs in the U.S., we're usually talking about two things, right? Automation, losing jobs to machines, and offshoring, losing jobs to other countries. And one of the great things about the kinds of jobs that they're creating and that they're talking about is they've got to be done by a human being, and they can't be done overseas. Installing, for example, distributed solar at somebody's home. That's obviously not something that you can ship overseas. So we're not just talking about good paying jobs, skilled jobs, jobs that can really strengthen the middle class. We're also talking about jobs that are going to be here for the long run.
That's a good point. What can we do here and buy American and encourage that good paying jobs right here at home? And Cameron, again, on the front lines, what do you see as far as the future of solar and some of these renewable projects? Because that really is one of the hallmarks of the Biden Build Back Better plan.
I see a great future for renewables. As I said, we had started in 2017. When we had started, we had kind of come up with a 3-year plan. The excitement of solar and renewable energy was so high in La Crosse that 3-year plan actually got pushed into about 6 months. So you can just see that there's so much excitement out there for the renewable energy. I do think that it's going to be important that the next administration really focuses on making sure that they're supportive of the solar industry. I know Kelly had talked about her net metering, and that's such a shame that happened. Net metering is an extremely important thing for solar, and to be a profitable piece and component to that, to make sure that that comes through. And I would like to clarify that there are a lot of Western Wisconsin energy companies that are very pro net metering and do a very good job of having a very competitive net metering program. But I do know that there are some that unfortunately are not following that net metering program, and it is disappointing. But I would certainly say that that and the federal tax incentives are going to be very important to make sure that we keep this this excitement and this growth going as we get this industry kind of under our feet and as excited as La Crosse was when we first came here.
Chris, let me ask you, how receptive has the private sector been with the services, the products that you're offering? Because, man, I got to tell you, one of the first actions that President Trump took is he withdrew us from the Paris Climate Agreement. We are the only nation in the world now that is not a party of where we need to go to address one of the great existential threats we face, global climate change, but also the key leadership role that the United States needs to be playing with all this. But I also noticed that the private sector is still moving forward when it comes to renewable and sustainable energy investment, because it's good for their bottom line and it makes sense for them. Is that what you're encountering?
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, sustainability, renewables, you know, it does to some extent have a little bit of a backlash when you bring it up to people that aren't open-minded. But people that really understand the payback, the ROI, it makes not only sense, it makes dollars and cents. I would actually add to the discussion of farm type applications with Kelly and other farmers, and to the Biden campaign. There are methods using digesters, and we've actually grown our digester sector, where we're actually designing and installing a means to convert solid waste and soils and turn it into biogas or methane. You know, this methane can be used to fuel vehicles. It can also be used as heating fuel for buildings. And we do find that in the private sector, there are more and more people that are interested in digesters as a component of their overall renewable plan.
Yeah, Chris, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've been particularly focused in Congress with legislation that I've introduced in a bipartisan fashion in order to create those incentives for biogas production and biodigesters, as you're describing. Again, creating these win-win situations I think are important and can help sustainable agriculture with some of the animal waste that they have to manage. And this is a way to convert that into energy in a contained fashion, so it's not polluting our rivers and streams and lakes and our drinking water, which is a huge issue here in Wisconsin, and an issue that Joe Biden recognizes, that part of the infrastructure investment we have to make is maintaining quality water supplies so we have sustainable communities and safe families ultimately. But Mayor Pete, let me ask you, because you mentioned it in your opening remarks, how important is it on the global stage for the U.S. to reassert our leadership in this area on climate change and in the new technologies and innovations of the future?
Well, here too, I think we've got a challenge that also amounts to an opportunity. Look, it's no secret that the world is thinking twice about whether it can look to the United States for leadership under a president who has done almost everything in his power to tear down alliances, to be absent from, sometimes literally absent from the table as world leaders gather together to do something about the pandemic and in so many other areas. So one thing that's been on my mind a lot is, how's the United States going to recover the trust of countries around the world that we really rely on, among other things, for our security? I think about the trust that was part of the alliance when I was serving abroad, that trust between countries. It takes a long time to build that up. But part of how I think any country can earn trust, and certainly a global leader like the United States, is to rally the countries of the world to deal with a major threat or a major problem. It's what we did in World War II. And we have a chance to do it right now. So in rising to meet the climate threat that is known to be one of the biggest threats to security anywhere in the 21st century, not only is it something we just plain have to do, but if we did it right, I actually think it would also be our best chance to recover that credibility that the United States needs. The reality is this is not going to be solved without the United States. We are the leading economy, the largest economy still in the world. It's also not going to be solved by the United States alone, because we're only 15% of world emissions. It's a classic example of the kind of thing that's only going to work through a high level of international cooperation, and that means a high level of international leadership. Also, if climate diplomacy mattered more, if that were more of a central feature to how countries look at each other for leadership, that's one of the best ways I can think of to be back on the front foot when it comes to strategic competitors like China, who we know are not doing their part but could be pushed to, if and only if we're leading by example. We're not in much of a position to exert the moral authority that would be needed, but we could be. And I know that this is a commitment in a future Biden administration, somebody who understands the relationship between what's going on in trade relationships and foreign policy relationships and what's going on in a manufacturing plant or a dairy farm in western Wisconsin.
Kelly, obviously you're a family farm in southwestern Wisconsin, and it's been no secret that over the last 4 or 5 years with low commodity prices, it has been very difficult for family farmers like yours to survive. And we do need a forward-looking plan to support that, to maintain diversity in agriculture. I vehemently disagree with President Trump's agriculture secretary, Sonny Perdue, when he came to Wisconsin and told you farmers, either you get big or you're out. And that's been the problem with agriculture policy for a long time. Huge taxpayer subsidies going to a few but very large agribusinesses, squeezing family farmers like yourself and overproducing and driving down commodity prices. How important is it, from your perspective, for us to show support for family farmers like you in today's economy with policies that Joe Biden is advocating in his plan?
I mean, obviously, coming from me, I'm very biased. It's incredibly important. I've always been a huge believer in small family farms. I don't want to paint all large farms as like, bad producers, bad to the land, but I do think, if you have more families that love the small piece of land that they're on, it's most likely going to get taken care of, or more attention is going to get paid to it. And that there's a huge domino effect there. The soil health is better, the animal health is better, the food that is produced for humans is better. So yeah, it's very difficult to know. It's such a huge system. Like how do you know what can be done to help support these small farms? I personally think that subsidies for giant, huge corn and soybean farms needs to probably go away. And like I kind of touched on earlier, like maybe incentivizing small farms with carbon credits, think something like that could help. But I definitely don't know the answer of how to help. Like, I don't think that there's just a silver bullet of how do you help small family farms. It's kind of been going this way since the late 80s, early 90s, the whole get big or get out thing. So it's a interesting issue to tackle.
Yeah, well, Kelly, I've obviously been very critical in regards to the subsidies in the Farm Bill, where it's targeted at the very top at the expense of family farmers. And we're seeing that same dynamic playing out with the cash grants that are being handed out by the Trump administration. They're using the old formula where the disproportionate amount is going to large agribusinesses and not back to the backbone of agriculture, the family farms, because we know you do punch above your weight. When you've got a buck in your pocket, you know how to spend it in our rural communities. And that trickle effect makes a big difference for our state's economy. But I've also been careful not to claim that the trade war that President Trump has started across the world indiscriminately, even against some of our closest friends and allies, are the sole cause of low commodity prices. But it's certainly piling on at the wrong time when we lose those export markets in order to help clear our excess surplus domestically so you can get a better price at the end of the day. How detrimental has this trade war been as far as agriculture prices and your ability to stay in business?
Well, it's been nice being on the organic side of it, because you do get a little bit of a higher pay price, but organic prices always follow conventional prices. So, you know, if they're continuing to go lower, so are ours. So, and then just having certain avenues being completely shut down for shipping, you know, whether it be corn or whatever, that completely drives prices down. So, I mean, it's been hard. You hope every year that you have a bad year, that next year is going to be better. And now we're going on 4 years of pretty tough prices. So, yeah, but it's been kind of a mix of a lot of things affecting that. So,
Cameron, Chris, obviously we've been operating under tariffs that the Trump administration has imposed on steel and aluminum in particular. Has that had a price impact on your product?
For Olson Solar, it did, and our customers unfortunately felt that almost immediately with our goods that were coming in, and anything that we were even American-made panels were feeling those tariff hikes, and because even though it's assembled here, it's still brought in from other places, which hurt. So.
Yeah, I would agree that we also saw the change in pricing as a result of the tariff hikes. And unfortunately, for many of the projects that we had under contract, we were held to a fixed fee already, and we ended up actually absorbing a lot of those increased costs because they came after we had already, you know, closed deals. So that was a direct hit to us on our financials. But once we got in front of it, then it ultimately cost the consumer more because we had to pass that along on future bids.
Mayor Pete, we're going to have the Vice President, Mike Pence, in our neighborhood tomorrow, actually talking about the new trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. Unquestionably, we need a good trade relationship with our two border neighbors, our two largest export markets, and to level the playing field so that our workers, our farmers, our businesses have a fair chance to compete in this economy. And nonetheless, the trade war that the president started has created a tit for tat, a retaliation, and as Chris and Cameron just mentioned, driving up prices. For some reason, the president can't understand that tariffs are a tax on the American consumer, on our producers, and that's a price that gets passed on to Americans. How important is it in the Biden administration to fight hard for good trade, fair trade agreements, to level the playing field, but also seeking those export markets too that don't come back to hurt us?
Well, the good news about a Biden administration is I think it will understand that we don't have to choose between free trade with no steps to protect American workers or trade war, which tend to be the only two visions that this administration seems to be able to handle. You're right. Tariffs can amount to hundreds of dollars more just for us as we're going through life shopping. This may not be a priority for a president who lives in a building in Manhattan with his name on it. But for American consumers, this is a real problem and it's a real issue. A tariff is, in fact, a tax. Now, I think part of how we know that we can move forward on this is if you look at the USMCA that I'm sure the VP will be touting and taking a lot of credit for. It was dramatically improved because of the steps that you and your House Democratic colleagues took and Senate Democrats took in order to make sure that it was better than originally proposed when it came to support for American workers and farmers and having the right kind of effects. But you can't be extending one hand to try to reach good trade deals with our neighbors, when with the other hand, you're poking them in the eye at every chance that you get. And that's exactly what we've seen with respect to Mexico and to Canada. And it just can't go on like this and be stable. So yes, of course, we want to be creating new opportunities to partner around the world, especially because we believe in our products and we believe in the quality of our agricultural goods. But that means having a clear strategy. And there's just not been a strategy in this administration. Vice President Biden has been very clear about his strategic goals to make sure that any and all trade is to the benefit of American workers, American farmers, American families, and American communities, just as you, I know, in your leadership on trade issues in the House have done. And that's exactly the approach we need so that we're not just throwing yet more uncertainty at American businesses and farmers with these kinds of erratic trade policies, or I don't even know if you can call it a policy, but these patterns, let's say, of going to the brink and then trying to walk it back.
Yeah, Mayor Pete, you're right. I think there was a consensus in both parties, really, that it was time to modernize NAFTA. There were a lot of things that were overlooked and not done well, and we needed to bring it into the 21st century. But I'm sure Vice President Pence will not recognize tomorrow, when he's in Wisconsin, that it was the hard work of Democrats in Congress that made that agreement a better agreement, strengthening worker rights and protections, strengthening environmental standards, and having enforceability provisions. So if Mexico and Canada aren't living up, we've got a way now to go back and enforce these provisions that were hard fought and that are in the agreement right now. And the goal was to level the playing field by raising standards to where we are rather than engaging in a race to the bottom. And that is the type of trade policy that Joe Biden will pursue as president, having worked with him in the past. And it's something that we need to change under the current circumstances for the benefit of our manufacturers and business owners like Cameron and like Chris, and for family farmers like Kelly and her family that are doing their best to survive right now. We're running out of time right now. Mayor Pete, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of give some parting thoughts or some comments before we wrap up this afternoon.
Sure. Well, first of all, again, I want to thank Chris and Kelly and Cameron for the work that you're doing, as well as for sharing that work with us today, because I think it's so important to make sure that that we explain how this stuff hits in everyday life and in the real world, in the jobs that you're creating, in the goods that you're producing, and in the difference that you're making. So I'm so glad we were able to share those stories. Congressman, I'm so thankful for your leadership and what you're doing in the caucus to stand for the families that you serve. This is a once in a lifetime kind of election. And I believe that the question of how we're going to emerge from this moment in this year is nothing less than the question of what our political and economic arrangements are going to look like for the rest of my lifetime. It's just one of those stops along the way in American history that winds up determining the course of everything to come. And so much depends on ensuring we have the right kind of leadership, guided by the spirit of empathy and compassion, but also rooted in common sense and understanding the specific steps that we're going to have to take in order to get ahead as a country, in order to come together, and in order to move forward. And climate and the interaction of climate and the opportunity to create jobs is perhaps the clearest example of why we can't wait another moment for that kind of leadership. That's why I'm looking forward to the Biden administration as an American citizen, certainly as a Midwesterner, coming from a community that sits among manufacturing and agricultural economies. And it's why I know that all of us who believe the same have so much work to do. There's no question that if the election were held today, it would be a landslide in favor of Vice President Biden. But we also know that a lot can happen in a few months. The last few months have reminded us very bluntly about how that's the case. And it's one of the reasons why everybody who has a stake in the future, and I would say if you breathe air or drink water, you have a big stake in this election, needs to come together, do everything that we can. And I know that when we do, we're going to have a lot to celebrate come November.
Well, thanks, Mayor Pete. And I too also want to thank Chris and Kelly and Cameron for your participation, your insight today as well. This is a pivotal moment, no question, in our nation's history. And we need a plan to move forward. We need leadership at the top, starting in the Oval Office, to deal with a global pandemic rather than just punting and giving up. And also a plan on how do we rebuild America properly as we come out of this, leaving no one behind. Joe Biden has been clear. His North Star is in the middle class, with working families throughout our country who made this nation great. That is the backbone, and that needs support right now, not only in protecting their health, but in creating a better, more inclusive economy. And that's what Joe Biden has always been. You know, a lot of people may feel they know Joe Biden because of his involvement for a number of years. What's most important is Joe Biden knows us. He knows the struggles, the challenges that we're facing. And he has laid out a clear plan to build back a better America right now, while also defeating this virus once and for all. But we need your help. We need everyone to get involved. It's been said that the great decisions of our time aren't made at late night debates in Congress with votes, but they're made on election day. And there is no more important election in our lives than to turn Wisconsin blue and to support Joe Biden. So if you want to be a part of the team, if you want to get involved, please text volunteer at the number 30330. Volunteer at 30330. We need your help. We need to build an army in order to get the vote out. And I'm confident that the plan that Joe Biden has laid out, and with your involvement, we can do this. So thank you all for participating this afternoon. Please stay safe and stay well out there, and make sure you vote in this year's election. Thank you, everyone.